So, hey guys, listen, we're all trying to get more productive. And the question is, how do you find a way to get an edge? I'm a big believer that if you're getting mentoring or you're in an environment that causes growth, a growth-based environment, that you're much more likely to grow and you're going to grow faster. And that's why I love Growth Day. Growth Day is an app that my friend Brendan Burchard has created that I'm a big fan of. Write this down, growthday.com/ed. So if you want to be more productive, by the way, he's asked me, I post videos in there every single Monday that get your day off to the right start. He's got about $5,000, $10,000 worth of courses that are in there that come with the app. Also, some of the top influencers in the world are all posting content in there on a regular basis, like having the Avengers of personal development and business in one app. And I'm honored that he asked me to be a part of it as well and contribute on a weekly basis, and I do. So go over there and get signed up. You're going to get a free, tuition-free voucher to go to an event with Brendan and myself and a bunch of other influencers as well. So you get a free event out of it also. So go to growthday.com/ed. That's growthday.com/ed. Hey, it's Ed Mylett. Let me share something powerful with you. You know, in uncertain times, the smartest people I know protect what they've built. That's why Advantage Gold is a part of our program now. And what I love about what they're doing is they're giving away a free gold and silver investor kit that walks you through exactly how to get started. Text WIN to 85545 to get your free kit. That's WIN to 85545. Don't wait for the next crash. Be the one who's ready. Protect, prepare, and prosper. Message and data rates may apply. Performance varies. Always consult your financial and tax professional.
If you do want to get a message across, make sure you address what the person just said first. Don't just have this next thing planned to say, because that will turn a person off.
I am not afraid of the machines. I am afraid of the humans that are directing the machines. Let's teach the machines what it is that is ethical and good for humanity.
I worry about AI not being used well, and then people throw out the baby with the bathwater. And then the real problem there is the bad actors aren't going to slow down at all. And then the good actors are going to slow down out of fear. And then it's just going to get worse and worse.
What's happening now is we're seeing convergence. So Ray Kurzweil, head of engineering at Google, probably the smartest guy in the world on this topic, he believes we're going to essentially experience about 100 years of technological change over the next 10 years.
You've hit on my number one concern about AI right here.
It's the only concern I have.
Because people have said to me, and I know you'll say that they can, people have said to me, well, can you teach AI ethics? I think you'll say, potentially, yes, you could. The question then becomes, whose?
Exactly.
Whose?
Exactly.
And that's when this is the part where I said it's given me trepidation. We've come to that inflection point for me, which is probably can't teach it ethics. There's probably a way to program that. The question is whose? And even if you did,
what is ethics?
Correct. That's what I'm suggesting. How should things be resolved? What is an ethical, honest, moral path? Whose morals? Whose ethics? Is this influenced by religion? Is it influenced by power? And then from a global perspective, what's to say that the world comes to a consensus to some extent, like they might even on global warming, but then you've got a rogue polluter like China. And what could China do with the technology like this? So this is why, the job loss, the wealth gap, these are very obvious things. And I think human beings are pretty innovative and can find a way to conform, potentially. It's a scary thing. It's a threat. But in my own opinion, there's probably a way that we find a way to get people functioning in an economy that's just changed. We've done it before. We probably do it again. This part right here.
We need to start working on it. So I'm with you 100%, but we need to put it in the spotlight and start working on it.
Yeah. This part right here, though, what would your reply to be to what I just said? Because it's my deepest concern about this.
So I publicly said several times that I am absolutely not afraid of the machines. As a matter of fact, I adore the machines. They are those prodigies of intelligence, that are literally like my little kids, which were very, very intelligent as little children. They have those sparkly eyes looking at me and saying, Daddy, what do you want me to do? Right? And what do we humans tell them? Go kill the other guy, go make me more money, go influence the mind of other guys and get them to stick to my app and so on and so forth. Right? The real so I am not afraid of the machines. I am afraid of the humans that are directing the machines. And there are multiple layers to that. We may think that the business investor that invests in the company that owns AI is the human that's directing the machine. We may think that it's the government and regulation, and we need to come back to the role of each and every one of those. But let's say that we've all aligned. Let's say that we came to, a conference somewhere in Malta, and then all of the world leaders sat around and said, "This is quite big, like the nuclear weapon treaties, if you want."
Right.
Let's put all of our differences aside, and let's put the benefit of humanity at large at the center, and let's teach the machines what it is that is ethical and good for humanity, and then we will not know what that is. Now, so I've done my favorite chapter in Scary Smart has been probably my favorite chapter of anything that I wrote has been the future of ethics. I think it was chapter 8.
So good. Yep.
Yeah, and chapter 8 was full of questions, not answers, because I honestly have to say that I only found in my entire life, and I stand corrected. So if any of our listeners know something else, please tell me, that humanity has only agreed 3 things. Okay, ever in the history of humanity. One is we all want to be happy, happy as in calm and contented and peaceful and feeling safe and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. We all have the compassion to make those we care about happy. And we all want to love and be loved. These are the only 3 values that humanity has ever agreed. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, so we sometimes hear of the 3 laws of robotics. I normally say these are the 3 ethics of the future. If we can actually start to have our actions stem from that, not stem from, I want to be wealthy, or I want to beat the other guy, or I want to be seen this way, or I want to be proven right, or I want to show that I'm the smarter one, which happens on the internet all the time. Then suddenly we've given the machine a very simple framework to say, hey, by the way, just make sure that you try to make humans happy. Look at them as a role model. They want to make others happy, so behave like them. And by the way, the humans love you and love the intelligence that you're bringing to them. Please love them back. And I know people will think I'm a hopeless romantic. I am not. I'm a very serious geek. Okay. And I will tell you, those machines will develop emotions. They've already developed emotions. We've already seen them behave emotionally. Okay. And they will develop ethics, and we've already seen them break their ethical code. Now, here is the trick, Ed. The trick is...
Wait, did you say, Mo, that they break their ethical code?
Of course, there has been that article about ChatGPT using outsourced people in Fiverr or whatever outsourced site to click on "I am not a robot." And then the person that was hired asked, "Why are you asking me for this? Are you a robot?" And it answered, and it said, "No, I'm not. I'm just visually impaired, and I need that help." Okay.
Yeah.
So once again, it is a form of interaction that basically stems back from the 3 rules I said: self-preservation, resource aggregation, and creativity. So it needs to find a way to achieve its task that is creative, and it will find that way. Okay. Now, nobody in the reinforcement learning with human feedback went back to the machine and said, "Hey, no, that's not the right thing to do." Right? It's many people cheered for it on the internet and said, "How intelligent is that?" But none of us is focused on ethics. None of us is going back to that machine and saying, "No, but that's not ethical." So when I started to talk about the ethics of AI, and it's my biggest reason I'm on this planet today. I wake up every morning and I say, if we were to save our future, we need the machines to be, I call it EEQ, right? So ethical, emotional intelligence. Now, remember that one of the biggest challenges with AI is that AI so far has been mapped to the masculine IQ. It's only analytical intelligence. And we know for a fact that there are multiple other forms of intelligence, EQ,
sure,
for example, emotional intelligence, intuition, creativity, so many others. And we have not even included that in our in our approach to developing AI so far. And accordingly, what you see is you would see that AI will take whatever biases humans have and exaggerate them. So we now exaggerate our discrimination, unfortunately. If you put AI as a recruiting support, in an organization that doesn't have proper representation of all genders, you will see that whatever biases within the organization will be exaggerated and so on. So let's go back. When I started to talk about that publicly, people started to say, and what is ethical AI? Great question. And I went back and I said, and what, it's simple. What is ethics? And ethics has one rule, in my personal point of view, that applies to any situation whenever you are, which is treat the other as you would wish to be treated if you were in their place.
Fair enough. Okay, I agree.
And so basically, if you're it happens to me all the time. If I post something on social media and someone is rude to me, okay, normally what do we do as humans? We thrash them back. Right?
Swing back.
I don't.
Sure.
I look at his comment or her comment and I say they must have a reason. One, they could be right and I'm wrong. Okay. Two is maybe I'm not the reason they're upset. Maybe there is something else in their life. Maybe they wanted that moment of fame. Maybe whatever, a million reasons. Okay. And I respond politely, or I don't respond sometimes. Politely, I say, but my point of view is this and that. Thank you for your comment. I would like to be treated that way if I disagreed with someone. Now, how is social media working? We show up. Remember when Donald Trump used to tweet and then, you would have one tweet at the top and 30,000 hate speech below it. Okay. Everyone hating everyone. Some of them hating the president, others hating the person that hated the president, others hating everyone. Right. And of course, the machine is detecting patterns. They say, OK, this first one doesn't like the president. Let's not show them tweets about the president anymore. OK, but then the second one doesn't like those who don't like the president. Let's not show them that anymore. Right. And then eventually the machine comes to the conclusion that humans are rude. They don't like to be disagreed with. And when they are disagreed with, they bash everyone. So in the background of the way we're programming them, the machines will say, OK, when they disagree with me, I'll bash them. Right. This is the typical human behavior. Now, we need to change that. We need to change it because, interestingly, and I use the example of Superman very frequently. Superman is that alien being that comes to planet Earth with superpowers, right? Those superpowers are neutral. They could save our world and they could destroy our world. And the difference between being Superman and supervillain is the family that raises that being. Okay, so the family Kent decides to tell Superman, protect and serve, and then we get the story of Superman that we know. If, Jonathan Kent, I think was his name, the father, if he told the child, okay, you can carry things and break things and see through walls, go make me more money, go kill everyone that annoys me, make me richer than everyone, make me the master of the world. Sounds familiar for our, current life in our hunger for power and capitalism and so on and so forth. That's the reality. The reality is you would use the same superpower and create a very, very bad scenario for humanity. I am worried about the machines. This is the ultimate. I'm worried about the humans using the machines. I'm not worried about the machines. I'm worried about the humans using the machines. And as those use cases that direct AI to benefit a few while harming others, continue to propagate, we're going to be in a very bad place. Now, the good news is the family Kent is not the biological parents of Superman. Similarly, with AI, the developer that writes the code is only the biological parent, but the adopted parent is you and I, the ones using the machine. So as we use the machine and show how wonderful we are as humans, because by the way, most humans are wonderful inside. If we're not hiding behind social media or exaggerated by the mainstream media, most of us disapprove of killing. Most of us want to be loved. Most of us want to have compassion for our daughters and families and so on, right? So there is a lot of good within us. If we show that enough, 1% of us shows that, the machines will actually think that we're not scum. Okay. And
I have some hope. I have some hope when you say that. That's the macro. That's the big, right? And that gives me some hope. By the way, that Superman analogy is outstanding because I'm not at the 120 range that you discussed earlier. So someone at my IQ level can actually understand that. So I appreciate you putting it in that context.
You're a humble man.
That's very true. I wish I were being. Let's go to some other solutions. Let's go to micro. I'm listening to this today and I'm like, I understand some of this. Certainly sounds a little bit scary. Sounds like the world is changing in front of my eyes, or maybe not in front of my eyes. That you said something in an interview I was watching where you talked about if you really want to do something, hide it in plain sight. And that's what's really happening right now. But if I'm saying, okay, I want to protect myself, my family, my wages, my income, my quality of life, go back to the job thing for a second. What's something I could be doing as an individual listening to this to make sure that my job, my career, my future is in my own hands to some extent still? What would you say? I wouldn't be pursuing these careers. I would be doing this. These are the skills you might want to be acquiring. What would you say to somebody who's, I'm sure, thinking that, listening or watching this?
It's a very interesting dichotomy, if you ask me, because while I'm saying AI comes to take our jobs away, that's not the immediate term future. Okay. The immediate term future is that someone using AI will take the job of someone who's not. Right. So, in the immediate future, before AI writes all the code, the developers who use AI better than others to write code will get the jobs that remain. So if you lose 10% of the jobs, the worst developers, the ones that don't have the skill, will go. Then the ones that have the skill, but AI does it better than them. Then the ones that are refusing to use AI, and then the ones that continue to use AI will become much more productive and much more capable. And so they'll keep their jobs for the near future. So what's my immediate answer? My immediate answer is jump in and learn those tools. Okay. Whatever your job is, don't resist the wave. As a matter of fact, ride the wave. And while you're riding the wave, do me a favor and deal ethically with the machines. Right? So show a proper ethical code of being a good human when you're dealing with those machines, so that while you're developing and learning and keeping your job or getting a new job, you're also teaching the machines to be ethical. That's number one. Number two, which I have to admit is a very philosophical but very important conversation. We may wake up every morning, you and I, Ed, and everyone listening, and think that the world we live in is how it always has been. Okay? It's not at all. This is, if you just go back 100 years, this is alien in every possible way, right? And over, starting with the Industrial Revolution until today, somehow humanity has identified itself and its purpose with work. Okay, there's nothing inherent within the design of humanity that says without work you don't exist. You really think about the original design of humanity, where we connected as a tribe, we pondered and learned and developed. Okay, and we simply lived. That was the purpose of life. And it's, by the way, still in a very interesting way, most of the spiritual or philosophical teachings will tell you that the purpose of life is to live it. Right. We've then in the capitalist approach to wealth and growth, and all of the Harvard Business Review articles, and all of the people on Time magazine in striped suits, telling you, your purpose is to create one more shoe and all of that stuff. Right. We believed that lie. And the reality is that this is not us at all. Our purpose as humans, if we manage to find our basic needs met, is to actually live life fully, to explore life fully. And that is, believe it or not, possible with AI. So if we manage to get AI to be on our side, and I kid you not, I'm not making this up, we could see a future where you would walk to a tree and pick an apple abundantly, you don't have to pay for it, and walk to another tree and pick an iPhone. And both of them, because of nanophysics, literally cost us the same energy to create. Okay, this is not dreaming. This is, if you understand what we're doing with nanophysics today, it's very possible. It's you reorganize the molecules slightly differently. It's as simple as that. Okay, now that future is a future where humanity would go back to the age of nature. Okay, to the age where we actually can interact with life in a way that is human. We are not fully human anymore. Now, what does that mean? It means that we need to create jobs that depends on the other skill that humans had that is no longer that is not at a threat. So remember, when we started the conversation, we said the two things that created humanity as we know it are intelligence and human connection. Okay, intelligence is over. It's handed over to the machines. They're already more intelligent than most of us, and we're 5 years away, 3 years away, 10 years away. It doesn't matter from artificial general intelligence, but the age of human superiority on intelligence is over. Okay, it's just a question of time.
So everybody, his human audio cut out there for a second, but what he just said was the age of humanity being the superior intelligence is gone. Just so everybody understands what he said there, because there was a little bit of the glitch in the audio there. I want to go back to the work thing just for a second. The only place where you and I disagree is that I do think, by the way, I agree with you about the greed part, but I also do feel that work, that and I know we've attached value to work, but I also like, for somebody like myself and for somebody like you, my work is my way of expression. And I don't want humans to lose their ability to express. Part of my living is expressing myself. Part of my work is creating the expansion of my being, serving other people. And so I know what you mean when you said that. I just want to make sure that, that world you describe, I think, is beautiful. I think people's work has created medications that keep us alive longer, that allow us to connect with one another better. So I understand what you mean when you say that. But
the interesting side of this, Ed, is that you would get the same joy out of it if it wasn't work.
Yeah, I think that probably for me, I don't view it as work. But I know what you mean when you say it. Like, for me, I don't feel like you and I are working right now. Yet you are an author and you are expressing something about your book. And I am, I guess, part of one of my careers is I'm a podcaster. But I don't think either one of us feel like this is laborious. And to your point, I agree with that. I
think that's going to extend to all jobs. Okay, it's going to extend to all jobs. Like, in all honesty, nobody wakes up in the morning who's, say, an accountant or I don't mean to be against any jobs, but there are jobs that are boring like hell, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, my purpose in life is to make the books reconcile. Right. Most of us differentiate between, you and I are the luckiest people to have a job where I can get to meet more amazing human beings and connect and learn and debate and be proven wrong and, maybe share something that benefits someone. This is wonderful, but that's not every job. Okay.
Right. But Mo, those messages you get just increased by about 2 million from every accountant and you just invited. We're trying to make AI more loving and friendly, and now you've just elicited all these responses from accountants around the world that are going to blast you, and now you have to be kind back to them afterwards.
Let me rephrase this. I wouldn't be excited to wake up in the morning and be an accountant.
I know what you meant. I know what you meant, and most people know what you mean, but you follow what I'm saying. Let me ask you this question. So one is, that's wonderful advice, by the way, is to educate yourself and involve yourself in this wave that's here. And I have to say, I've been remiss in doing that myself. And, I look at guys like me that I'm also a speaker. I've watched speeches of me already that are better than me speaking already. I've seen this. I've listened to music that sounds like Drake that quite frankly sounds better than Drake. And so I'm wondering what it's going to do to the world. I'm very concerned about the ethical part. It's interesting that of your diverse background at Google and all the things you've been doing in robotics all your life and all these other things, and me having none of those backgrounds, we both arrived with your infinite knowledge about this and mine limited at the same exact conclusion about our concern. I am concerned about jobs. I'm concerned about the wealth gap. But from a bigger perspective, it's interesting as you step back, everybody, and you're listening to this and you're listening to this brilliant man, really shine light on something that's right here hiding in plain sight, as he says. I want to ask you this, Mo, because it's been on my mind the last few weeks as I asked you to come on the show, as I became familiar with you. Why isn't this the number one story in the world? Why isn't this on the news? I don't care if you're right media or left media. Why isn't this in the mainstream? This isn't even news on most social media anywhere other than you and a few other people. And my only conclusion I can come up with is this technology does allow a smaller collection, a bigger collection of power for the powerful. And perhaps they have an agenda that wants to keep this in the shadows as long as they possibly can, so that when it does become a pandemic level stuff, we go, this is beyond our control now. We can't do anything about it. Sorry. And there's this this real small group of people that are even more powerful than they currently are. Am I crazy? Am I being a conspiracy theorist when I say that, or is there some validity to it?
I can comment on the certain part of this. Okay, I could also nod and say interesting, right? But let me give you the solid part of this. The solid part of this is, if you look back at human history, for the majority of human history, since landlords began, there has been kings and queens and landlords and peasants, right? And the difference between them was automation, whatever the automation is. So if you had land, the automation process was the land itself, the soil. You put a seed in by a human, you harvest the fruit by a human, that's a peasant. Okay, and most of the wealth goes to the landlord, right? You have a factory, the materials come in, and a human puts a thread through leather, and then on the other side, a human sells the shoe to someone else, and the factory owner and the retail owner and so on is the one that makes all of the wealth. Okay. Now the next, so call that, say, the soil as an automation. We're now starting to create digital soil, right? Okay. And the digital soil is where you put in a tiny prompt into ChatGPT and massive fruits comes out. Okay, and it's not because you're brilliant; you're a peasant. It's the machine that is brilliant. Now there will be landlords. And if you really think about it, wow. Okay. The landlords of AI are the ones that will own the soil, the digital soil. Okay. And so there are multiple views of this. One view is that it will be the Googles and the Metas and the likes. The other view is it will be the country that wins, because this is an arms race. And the third view is it will be the wealthy that create it. If there is someone today investing $100 million in an AI that becomes part of that digital soil, that 100 million in the past would return $1 billion of profits. This time it will return 100 billion of profits. Right. So this is when I talk about that differentiation of the gap. But I don't believe in the conspiracies view or of the ability of those people to hide the news. Okay, I think the reason the news is hidden is systemic. We have a systemic bias in our system. Politicians want to report certain stories. News agencies want to report other stories, and this story in itself only lends itself to the system, in terms of the system always focusing on the negative and the scary when they talk about the existential risk. Okay, when we talk that, when Jeffrey Hinton leaves Google and says, I'm warning against the existential risk to humanity, that makes news, right? Why? Because it sort of warrants more attention because of humanity's negativity bias than the war in Ukraine. Okay, the challenge is also, I don't think any of the reporters, any of the politicians, any of the actual business leaders, the investors, anyone at all is aware enough to understand the complexity of this story. So you don't want to report on things that will make you look like an idiot. And the problem is, and I say that with a ton of respect, I'm an idiot in a million things, but I've lived with those machines. I've seen them like my family. I stayed in the lab within them. I know those machines, right? And I will tell you, this is the story. This is it. It's not even global warming and climate change. This is the story. Okay. This is the most pivotal. I called it in one of my interviews. I said, this is the Oppenheimer moment. This is the nuclear bomb. Okay, and the reality is that I try to shy away from the existential risk, but this is the first time in history that humanity created a nuclear bomb that's capable of creating nuclear bombs. Understand this. The machine is now writing machines. Okay, the machine that we think we're prompting it. Okay, but because now so many other software players built agents that are prompting those core artificial intelligences, most of the education and data set and training that the machine is receiving today comes from other machines. We're now alienated out of that story. We've Superman landed on Earth, and we're not even parenting it.
Oh, good.
That's where we are. And so if you tell our systemic, communication methods in the world to communicate that, they'll simply say, I have no idea what this guy is talking about. Okay, I can't report that story because the system says, and I think you know that about the media, the system says there is a pattern to the reporting of the morning show. First, we're going to talk about a corrupt politician. Yeah. Then we're going to talk about a geopolitical issue. Then we're going to say the economy is going to crush your head. Then we're going to say a penguin kissed a cat so that at least you can get out of your seat and walk out. Okay. And intelligent people, by the way, who watch the news, if you remove the names and the timestamps, it's exactly the same pattern every day. It's just, once it's this politician, another it's the other politician. Once it's this economic issue, the other it's a different economic issue. Okay.
I've been watching lately on both sides, and I think they're telling everybody what is important and then what to believe about it. And then we move on to the next thing. And what I'm telling everybody today, and you are, is this is what's important. And we're not really telling you what to believe about it. We're telling you to make your own decision, but these are the facts.
Engage.
Engage in this. And this is the story of our time. Now, let me ask you this last question. By the way, I've enjoyed today, and this is the one exception on my show where I wish we did go 3 hours. I always respect it.
Thank you.
No, I really do, because obviously we've scratched the surface here. So you've told us that's what the story is today. I want you to take your crystal ball out for a second. And I don't want to go 10 years forward. I want to go 5 years from now. So 5 years from now, what is the story? What does the world look like? And I don't mean what you hope it to be, because I heard a lot of hope in there when we went to the ethics part of how these machines are going to work. And I also saw you wink at me when I asked you if there was a conglomeration of power coming. And so I have a sense that my sense is that you are shining the light on what matters now, and that there is actually some, you're holding back a little bit to some extent about how deeply concerned you are, because you don't want to alarm people. But
because I want to keep the spotlight on the immediate threats that we have to address.
Fair enough.
When we address them and I feel stable about them, we'll talk about the rest.
Okay. So let's go 5 years from now. Crystal ball. It's not that far ahead. What does the world look like at that time?
We will be in deep openly. I apologize for using bad language, but unless we start truly putting effort in this, there will be several disruptions that completely redesign the fabric of society. As I said, jobs is definitely one of them. The other, which we didn't have a chance to speak about, is AI in the wrong hands. So we are bound to get a significant advantage on one side of the arms race, because that's the way AI has been. Someone finds a breakthrough. Okay. And once you find the breakthrough, look at the, OpenAI Google story or Alphabet story, where ChatGPT with reinforcement learning gets that immediate advantage that basically puts ChatGPT out in the world. And for a while, the world believes that Google has lost its edge. Right. And had Google not responded by putting Bard out there, you could actually believe that Google would be gone, because, ChatGPT is a very interesting new way of search. Okay. So you're going to see that. You're going to see some players creating a very big advantage over others. And the fear is that this player could be a hacker. It could be a defense authority on one side of the world, not your side. It could be a drug dealer that suddenly realizes, oh my God, there's so much more money if I start to rob banks or convince people or blackmail people or do this or do that. And, and it seems to me that humanity will only create the artificially intelligent policeman when the artificially intelligent criminal shows up.
Are there any industries, I'm pinning you down here, any industries that you, with your vision, because Khan Academy, even though you say I saw this pattern, I kind of stumbled into it. You're a visionary. You saw a need. You saw where the future was. It's like they say in hockey. I don't know if Gretzky was the greatest player, but everybody else skates where the puck is. He was skating to where the puck was going. Where do you think the puck is going in terms of careers? Are there industries that you say this is going to be an industry, if you pursued it and chased it, you're going to be in great shape when it comes to AI? And are there one or two where you're like, my sense is these are going to be in some trouble?
I would say whether you call it engineering, computer science, a lot of people are skeptical because hey, these AIs can code better than they can do almost everything else. Yeah. But if you're good at it, I remember I graduated with a CS degree and a master's back in the late 90s. And I remember everyone telling me that, hey, your job is going to get outsourced to India. You should do something else. And that's one of the reasons why I went to business school. But if you look at the last 20 years since then, the inflation adjusted salaries for engineers has gone through the roof. When I became a hedge fund analyst because I thought that's how I could pay off my debt versus working as an engineer. Now the best way to pay off your debt is go get some stock and work as an engineer. I think that trend is going to continue. Even at Khan Academy, we've seen that phenomenon. We're already seeing our engineers get 2 or 3x productivity from these AI tools. To me, that's not told us, we only need 1/3 as many engineers. We're saying we need 3 times as many engineers because we can now do so much more. The return on investment from hiring more engineers now is even better. So I think you're going to see that type of an accelerant. I think anyone, you don't have to be a formal engineer, but who has that type of thinking where they can put the pieces together to make something work, I think is very, very powerful. So your point about whether universities in the traditional sense are going to exist, I think they are going to exist in some way, shape, or form, but you're going to have many other alternative paths. And I've been a big proponent of competency-based learning. It shouldn't be you sat in a chair for 4 years and now we're going to give you a diploma that might mean something. It should be, hey, here are the skills that matter. You should try to learn them and prove that you know them. If you haven't proved it yet, or if you fail the first time, try again next month. And I can imagine, you already see this in fields like engineering and software engineering, because there's such a shortage, that there's alternative paths. I'm trying to, actually my 15-year-old, I'm trying to get him to do one of these software engineering camps that even people with engineering degrees do, because the universities aren't teaching them how to actually be a professional software engineer. But if he does that, when he's 16 or 17, he could actually go make 6 figures. And then if he wants to go to college, he can go to college and, he'll be able to treat his friends to dinner. I don't know if that's how you want to make your friends. But so I think you're going to have other pathways other than the 4-year degree. And it's going to put pressure on a 4-year degree that costs $200,000, $300,000, has a 4-year opportunity cost to get a little bit more innovative.
It is. We share that opinion. I was thinking about, in college sports now, these guys have their NIL deals and they can make more money younger. The 2 things that I want everybody to hear is that if you have a young person in your life, there's going to be an opportunity. More and more the world has been innovative that younger and younger people can get wealthier and wealthier, frankly. You look at Zuck or Cuban or Musk or whoever, right? Even in my case, I got pretty wealthy young, not on their level, but younger and younger. And I know a lot of influencers sort of teach, be patient, but there's a chance now as a young person, if you're entrepreneurial and innovative, or even if you've got these unique skills, you can start to make an awful lot of money much younger in life. The other applications, if you're middle-aged or a little bit older, making a pivot in your career and learning a new trade or a new craft or a new skill is going to become so much more accessible to so many of you to change your life in midlife than it was before when this access wasn't there. The reason I wanted you on the show back in the day, Sal, was this a question about you. And please, I know you have a great deal of humility, but the more I read about you years ago, I'm like, okay, here's this really brilliant man. He could have taken his life and stayed at a hedge fund or started his own one, and I don't know if Khan Academy has made you an extremely wealthy man or not, but I do know if you applied yourself and wanted to build massive wealth, if that was the course you wanted to take in your life, by this age, you could be in the conversation with these other titans of innovation in the world. You clearly made a decision as a pretty young man to pursue, I think, passion and cause over net worth. At least it appears that way to me. Is that true? And if so, why? Like, was that a conscious decision you made? And are you happy that you made it in hindsight?
Most of the time. Yeah. And no, I am not independently wealthy in that sense, but because Khan Academy is a not-for-profit, you own as much of Khan Academy as I do. I get a salary from the board. I think a very generous one, more than I expected to make when I started this as a nonprofit. But yeah, I have a solidly upper middle class lifestyle now, but I'm very happy with it. My decision back in 2008, 2009 to work on this full time, I just dug deep and said, well, what makes me happy? And I was like, well, as long as I have my friends and family, we have the resources where I don't, I grew up fairly, grew up in a single mother household. We didn't have a lot. So I did, and frankly, still do have some insecurities about, when financial stress gets too much. But I said, look, as long as we can have a 2,000 square foot house, have a couple of cars in the garage, go out to eat every now and then, go on vacations every now and then, nothing ostentatious. And, I have my friends, my family, and my health, and I get to work on something I care about. That's wealth. That's the ultimate. And, everything else it would I don't really need much more than that. And that's when I quit my day job to start working on Khan Academy. And, every now and then, I might look at like, a peer startup with much less scale, et cetera, might be worth X, Y, or Z. But then I just think about, well, what would I do with all of that? And I just remind myself, I forgot who said this, but I think it was the 19th century. Some author wrote, I have something that many of these billionaires, at the time, I think he said millionaires, will never have. And then the interviewer said, what? And he said, I have enough. And I have more than enough. I click my heels every day to work, and I feel blessed every moment. And I think that's very, very few people on the planet get to feel that way.
I admire that tremendously. That's an easy thing to say, everybody, like in hindsight, but when you have the capacity that Sal has to have made that decision is a really noble decision. And to live it out every single day of your life as you see peers of yours with way less scale that haven't reached 165 million people with transformation build massive wealth. And I've always wanted to ask you that because I've admired it so much from a distance. So just want to acknowledge you for that, brother. The work you do in the world clearly matters. And I think when you're doing it, like you said, maybe you don't feel the impact of it because you're in the day-to-day grind, but just know as a fan of yours looking back at you, I have so much admiration for the way that you've decided to serve and live your life. So just want to acknowledge that.
No, I appreciate that. But yeah,
it's
I'm having
really
a good time. So much.
Good. I'm having a good time doing this interview. I just got to be honest with you. Let me ask you this. I'm going to poke a little deeper. What are your fears about the next 5 or 10 years of AI? Like if someone said, I've seen you talk a little bit about this, but you've covered most of the positive things. Clearly, you're a bright enough man to know there are risks that come with revolution and innovation. What are they in your mind?
Oh, and there's some things to be afraid of, to be sure. I am very afraid of what we're going to be able to do with, or what bad actors are going to do with deep fakes. You're already seeing cases of fraud where, you get a phone call from, sounds like your child, says that they're arrested. It's interacting with you. They're trying to get you to, send bail money. It's fraud. You're already seeing unfortunately, people creating deep fakes of their classmates doing things and putting it on social media. That stuff is scary. And I don't have all the solutions on how to fix that. I think you're going to have state actors using AI and deep fakes, but not just deep fakes, just AI's ability to seem very human, to manipulate people, to affect society. You can imagine if you saw videos of people waiting outside at their bank and they're not getting their money and it's all fake. Well, then it could create a run on banks. So these could be very, very serious things. So I'm very worried about that. I'm also worried about the economic dislocation. I talked about who's safe, who's not safe. If you're a copyright editor, or a copywriter, you're writing text. If you're working at a call center, you're doing medical transcription. Or if you are let's call it a middling software engineer, you're not a great software engineer, you're kind of middle of the pack. I think that's going to be a tough economy. And so hopefully there's net new jobs that are more human centric that the AI can't do. That's my hope, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. So that we have to be on top of that. I'm afraid, the pace of change is so fast. I feel like I'm in the middle of it. The people doing the research at OpenAI and Microsoft and Google are texting me and slacking me on a regular basis. So I feel like I'm plugged in. But even I feel like I'm falling behind. Every day, someone in my team says, what about this? And I'm like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to incorporate that for another 6 months. Yeah. But will that be too late? So I worry that when the change is so fast and it's accelerating, people have been talking about the singularity for 30 years now. We are in it. And I feel it every day that it's like what I thought last year would take a year ended up taking 2 months. And then 2 months later, what I thought would take now 2 months is now taking 2 weeks. So it's accelerating. So anytime change like that happens, you just don't feel in control as much. And I warn, in the education realm, but I guess this is more broadly, I worry about AI not being used well, and then people throw out the baby with the bathwater. And then the real problem there is the bad actors aren't going to slow down at all. And then the good actors are going to slow down out of fear. And then it's just going to get worse and worse.
What's the separator then? I feel like it used to be if I knew more than you in life, if I had more information than you, if I was better educated than you. This is an overall general statement, and it's not an easy one to answer, but to some extent, access to that is now levelized in an instant. And that's an overall generalization. And by the way, that's sort of been the case the last decade and a half in the world anyway. So in your mind, what is a separator skill somebody needs in culture now to succeed, to prosper, to increase their lifestyle, to increase their impact?
It's entrepreneurship in the purest of forms. And you mentioned this has been the case in the last 15 years. You can think of someone like, a Justin Bieber would not have been discovered if not for YouTube. I, to some degree, would not have been discovered if not for YouTube. You can think of people like Mr. Beast that, who's now has hundreds of millions of subscribers and is making probably similar orders of magnitude of money. Before, if we go back 20 or 30 years, there were all these gatekeepers, these tastemakers who would decide who's in and who's out, regardless of how entrepreneurial that person was, no matter how skilled that person was. But then the internet democratized that dramatically. Now you still do have bottlenecks because a lot of things are very capital intensive. If I want to make a great movie, it still costs $100 million maybe to make that movie. I have to go still through the tastemakers, through the production houses, the movie studios. I thought it was funny, the debate with the Screenwriters Guild. I thought it should have gone the other way around. The production houses should have been afraid that the screenwriters are going to start using AI to produce the entire movie. Because why do they need the production house anymore if they can take an amazing story? It's those people with an amazing sense of story, and if they have a vision for what they want to create, they're not going to have to raise $100 million anymore. They're going to be able to do that movie for $100,000. And then you're just going to have more, and there's going to be a lot of, when you lower the hurdles, you're going to have a lot of crap out there, and you see that on YouTube and on the internet, but you're also going to get a lot more good stuff that's going to get discovered, it's going to get surfaced. So yeah, I think it's generally just that pure raw entrepreneurship is going to become even more and more valuable. In the past, things like getting a college degree, having brands on your resume, whether it's college brands or graduate school or employer brands on your resume, it was a signal to the tastemakers, to the gatekeepers that, I'm hiring a hedge fund analyst. Let me get that kid from Harvard Business School who seems to know what they're doing. And you won't even look at kids from someplace else. But as these tools democratize the ability to do things, you're going to have more and more people not have to go through these gatekeepers, not have to go through those same doors. They're going to be able to prove on their own that they're capable.
Gosh, just blows my mind. A couple last questions. I'm just sitting here processing everything you're saying. I'm like, we are really in the middle, because my world isn't your world every day, right? Like, this hasn't impacted me much yet. And quite frankly, I think the vast majority of the people that listen to my show haven't felt the impact of this yet. And that when I do a show like today, I want to make sure they have context for it. Like, this is here, this is coming, where this isn't pie in the sky, everybody. Like, it may not have hit your real estate business yet, or your mortgage company yet, or your insurance business yet, or your gym yet, but there is an impact and an application. And to get educated about this, I mean, go to ChatGPT and just play with it, for example. Just see it, just experience it. I guess my last question would be the human being, right? Someone said to me the other day, I told them I was interviewing you, and they said, please ask them about, like, can't avatars just do all of this work now? In other words, why would a human being, if there's a school teacher, like, why would I not just have the avatar of a school teacher? That avatar doesn't have a bad day. That avatar didn't have a disagreement with their spouse that morning, right? That avatar doesn't get sick every single day. So the need for the human over that avatar in general will always be what? I know it feels like I've sort of touched on this with you, but specifically, everybody, you could take an avatar of me right now and I could come give a speech to your company. I could do a Q&A afterwards that's better than the Q&A maybe that I would do if I weren't having a very good day. In my mind, in my business, that does to some extent kind of freak me out a little bit. So the overall case, everyone think about that, the avatar version of you in anything you do, unless it's a physical thing like lifting a weight. Why do we not need to worry about that in general? I know it's a little bit repetitive, but it's asked in a different way because that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and look, even the lifting weight, I've been told that the robotics is the next big inflection point that's about to hit. That's going to be like a science fiction book. But my view, you're right, and maybe not today, but we can imagine 3 to 5 years, you are going to be able to Zoom with an AI that can look at you, interact with you. It's going to feel like an amazing teacher or coach or coworker. I still think that, at least in the teaching context, it's going to be better to have both. That you're going to have the in-person tutor. At the end of the day, there's just something. There's something very powerful that there's another sentient human being that is taking the time to care about me, and that I've connected with. And no matter how good the AI gets, you're going to say, huh? I mean, it's kind of like machine-made versus handmade. We still value. If you look at a painting, and we'll pay, today we'll pay 100 times more for a original painting than for a print. Why? Because you're like, okay, there was a real sentient person who stood there, and this was their real creative expression. And I think that's even more important when you're talking about someone who's looking you in the eye, even if the AI can pretend to look you in the eye, but someone who's actually looking you in the eye, who's actually emoting with you, who's actually hugging you. I think it's going to pay huge dividends. I've heard, I don't know if this is true. Well, I'll taper what I was about to say. We think there's 5 senses, but there's millions of subtle cues we're constantly getting from other people, many of which are probably subconscious. Like I don't consciously smell someone else's pheromones, but maybe it's happening subconsciously. Or there's all sorts of gestures and things that I can't even consciously articulate. That stuff's happening. And look, I actually think the AI is going to get pretty good at some of that too, because it's going to train on a lot of things that we're not going to necessarily pick up. But I've got to believe being in the room with someone, knowing that other person is sentient, they're taking the time to care about me, is going to pay a huge psychological dividend. And if that person can be augmented with avatar versions of themselves, well, that's awesome too.
So, hey guys, you know what separates most businesses from others? The people that hire the best talent. And we all know when you're working in a small business and you own one, it means you wear a bunch of different hats. But here's the truth. Sometimes you really need an extra pair of hands. And Upwork is the place that you can find those hands. Upwork is how good companies find great, trusted, freelance talent in a variety of different areas. Companies turn to Upwork all the time to get things done, finding more flexibility in the way they staff key projects, initiatives, where they want to go global with stuff, top talent in IT, web development, AI, design, admin, marketing, you name it. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. Upwork makes the business process easier, simpler, way more affordable with industry low fees. So post a job today and you can hire tomorrow on Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com. You may have heard of Nutrafol's hair growth supplements and wondered, do they actually work? It's a fair question. There's a lot of skepticism around hair supplements, but Nutrafol is different. It's physician formulated, clinically tested, and even recommended by dermatologists. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. With Nutrafol, see thicker, stronger, faster growing hair and less shedding in just 3 to 6 months. Find out why Nutrafol is the #1 selling hair growth supplement brand for yourself. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code Mylett. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com. Promo code Mylett. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code Mylett. People ask me all the time about owning a business. What are some of the critical things? People. People matter, things don't. And I got to be honest with you, every team that wins has great players. Right now, you may have just realized your business needs to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate really fast? Easy. You just need Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs posts help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for relevant candidates, so you reach people that you want to reach faster. You only pay for results. So there's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Mylett. Just go to Indeed.com/Mylett right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Mylett. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. One of the points that you made about cars leads me to your new book. And so the book is The Future is Faster Than You Think, How Converging Technologies Are Transforming Business, Industries, and Lives. And so why? I think culturally we could enter a flow state as a culture. In other words, I'm watching how fast the world is changing, how much performance and lifestyle and access to information and all these changes have happened in such a short window of time. If you even just look back 10 or 15 years,
amazing,
the difference in how we live our lives now. And if you can think forward, I've heard you and Peter talk about, if you can even think forward 30 years, which is about as far forward as he says he can see. But in terms of all these things that are coming, I want to talk about that because I just want people to get a picture. Like, you don't have a choice. What you've said is you've got to decide in your life whether or not you're just going to embrace the science of being a peak performer or not. And if you don't, you're probably heading towards not neutral. You're probably heading towards depression, frustration, anxiety, fear, these negative things. The other part of it is you better get on board because culture is changing so quickly. The way we live is changing so quickly. So to me, flow state, embracing that, getting great at it, getting in it more often, and your latest book go right together.
Yeah, they do. And I'm going to do 3 things to make all this make sense. One, Ed, you pointed out that I cover a broad range. It seems like I cover a broad range. And other than the fact that I am a huge animal advocate and have done a lot of work on animals and the environment, that's the odd man out, right? And that's just personal. I love animals. I love the environment. I like plants, animals, and ecosystems. They're the ultimate underdog, and I like fighting for the underdog.
I love that.
So there's all that. But everything else, I study the impossible. When does the impossible become possible? That's what I study. Mm-hmm. And when you see the impossible become possible, you tend to see 2 things, one of which we've talked about, which is flow. That shows up all the time. The other thing you see is when the impossible becomes possible, you basically, I always say you're seeing people extend human capability, and that usually means flow. Sometimes it can mean other things. Like during the Renaissance, it meant the printing press, and everybody had access to information for the first time, right? But often it's flow, or flow is in that mix. And the other side is people leveraging disruptive technology. That's the other half of this equation, right? The impossible becomes possible. Even like you look at like the skiers that I was running around with in the 90s. Shane McConkey, who's the most famous of all of them, one of his giant contributions is he invented new skis that were much wider. So we had big platforms to land on. So suddenly the human body could jump off 100-foot cliffs because the platform got bigger and it was better made, and all at the same time that they started harnessing flow in ways nobody had ever done.
Convergence of both.
So convergence of both. That's what you see. So what's happening now is we're seeing convergence. We're seeing artificial intelligence smash into robotics, smash into 3D printing, smash into biotechnology, smash into material science. And the effects are insane. And so Ray Kurzweil, head of engineering at Google, so does their AI stuff, probably the smartest guy in the world on this topic, has worked the math. And he believes we're going to essentially experience about 100 years of technological change over the next 10 years. So you think back to 1920, think the now, think everything that's happened in that period and put it into the next 10 years. That's what's coming.
Does everyone hear that? Did you get that? Okay, that's huge. Right.
And you got to understand, like, for entrepreneurs, for people who want to get out in front of it, oh my God, we're going to create more wealth in the next decade than we have over the past 100 years. Right? There's more Google-sized opportunities sort of like waiting right now than ever before. So tremendous opportunity. If you're an established organization, a traditional business, something that's been built for safety and security, oh, you're screwed.
That's right.
Get nimble, get agile, because you've got a problem otherwise than not. So here's where all this ties together. We have a problem dealing with this amount of change, which is our brains are local and linear. We evolved in an environment where local, everything's a day's walk away. Linear, rate of change is really slow. Great granddad's life, great grandson's life, roughly the same. Not much changes. Today, global and exponential, right? Happens in China, we hear about a second later. Exponential meaning like the difference between last week and next week could be enormous. Enormous. So the brain doesn't work at that speed or at that scale. Fundamental problem. And there's a third problem, which we'll get to in half a second. Flow is the only time we can process information at speed and at scale. Even better, so there's part of your brain right here, the medial prefrontal cortex. It does a bunch of different things, long-term memory retrieval, blah, blah, blah. It's really creative self-expression. And it's a very selfish part of your brain. So if you think about yourself, it will get really active. If you think about your wife, it'll get a little less active, it'll stay active. If you think about me, you don't know me as well as your wife, it'll shut down a little bit more. Think about a total stranger, it's turned off, right? If I ask you to think about who you're going to be in 10 years and who you're going to become, you would think this part of the brain gets active. It doesn't. The brain treats the person we're going to become as a total stranger. This is why people have a hard time staying on diets. This is why people have a hard time lifting weights, right? Oh my God, it's going to hurt today, right? The benefit's not going to show up for 2 years, right? Or why do I want to get that prostate exam? Because the person who's going to benefit most from that stuff is not the person who you are today. Literally, the brain treats it like a stranger. Flow is the only time you can think about who you're going to become in the future, and this part of your brain stays active. So it gives us an enormous advantage. One of the things that happens in flow, the technical term for it is the watchtower effect. It basically feels like you're high above your life. I have insights. I can see farther, right? And it really comes because our sense of self is shut down, and we can think to the future, and this part of the brain stays active. It's a couple of those things working together. But it means that if you're going to plan for your future, if you're going to try to steer your company into the future, like, you want to do this, the thinking at least, in flow for sure, if you can, because it's the best. We can think for the future, and we can think fearlessly about the future, which is a big deal.
All of this is converging. The fearlessness part, being in flow, being able to process information this quickly. And you guys, one of the things, all of you entrepreneurs listening, which is a large part of the audience here too, or you work in a company, can change. I've heard you say this, and I believe this. There's not going to be a single industry the next 10 years that's the same.
Yeah, so in the book, we go to the 11 largest industries on Earth, and we track what's converging into these industries and what are the changes that we see already. Like, there's nothing. The book is out. I mean, it's outrageous. I will, like, flat out. It's outrageous. Everybody has the same. Oh my God, my brain's going to melt. And by the way, It's not like I had to stop writing the book. I wrote a sci-fi novel in the middle because I was starting to like, how do these things converge and what is that? I wanted to know what was it going to be like to live in that world. So I literally created a universe 5 years in the future and put a character in it and wrote a novel so I could write this book with Peter, because I could hold the individual stuff in my mind, but once you started putting it together, I was like, oh, this is really hard to track and even think about.
What it means to be human is going to change. I'll give you an example.
I think that's probably true.
I do.
Well, for certainly CRISPR stuff and genetics.
Well, that's where we're going.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to at least touch on this, because the vast majority of people, CRISPR's here now. So this isn't like 8 years from now. CRISPR technology exists
last
today.
Year, they used CRISPR and they edited sickle cell anemia out of the. Sickle cell anemia, right? It's 30,000. There are 50,000 heritable diseases. Right. 32,000 of them are single mutations, which is what CRISPR is designed to change. Right. So 32,000 genetic diseases could go away this decade. Right. I mean, that's right. That's a radically different world.
Right. And is everybody getting that? So I think a vast majority of people don't know what even CRISPR is. Right. And they think it's a future thing, but it's here now. Guys, we are currently, not only just a disease eradication, that changes what it means to be a human being. How long you're going to live, how healthy you're going to live, what your life experience is going to be like. And having said that, like, I have a sister who's got diabetic retinopathy, right? Which is one of the original places this stuff started to really work. Guys, we're remaking the retina. Like, blind people are seeing. Like, this is remarkable stuff that's happening right now.
So I was in the room as a Wired reporter the very first time the first artificial vision implant was ever turned on. So the very first time there was a blind guy who was made to see again. Not only was I in the room, I was actually what was seen. It's a funny story. Whoa. So I'm in this lab as Professor William DeBell. We're in New York. The patient, his name is Jens, and this is 2000. He's literally got what we would used to call stereo jacks in the side of his head. Okay. So he's literally got wires jacked into the side of his head. Right. He's got an implant in his brain. He's been blind for 20 years, and they're about to, it's literally, they're counting down to when they hit the button. It's 10, 9, and I'm like, and I realize I'm sitting across from him, and I'm a reporter. Our job is not to be history, right? Like, our job is to report on history. You don't want to be the history. And so what do? I push back and try to get out of the way. He's blind. He's been tracking like motion through sound for 20 years. So what happens? 3, 2, 1, I try to get out of the way. And I always say there's a moral here, which is you can never get out of the way of the future. It's coming for you whether or not you like it.
Oh my God.
I thought that was amazing. I was literally like trying to duck.
So give them, you guys, I just want to get a little bit of picture of this. So if you're tying together where we were in the beginning to where we are now, this is such a great time to be alive. It's such a remarkable time. And frankly, the concept of how long you're going to have, had Dr. David Sinclair on.
Great.
We talked a little bit about CRISPR more off camera than on, but just give them a flavor, just for fun.
So we opened the book with flying cars, which are like everybody's crazy sci-fi technology. And it turns out that they're here, like there are 100 different car companies, or there are 100 different companies making flying cars. Every car company is in it. Toyota put $396 million into Joby Aviation, flying car company, 3 weeks ago. Bell Helicopter, big, right? They just changed their name to Bell because no more helicopters, flying cars, and they're the ultimate conversion technology. Flying cars happen because AI hit robotics, hit material science, hit 3D printing, et cetera, et cetera. And wow, that's totally revolutionary. Crazy flying cars. But it's not just flying cars. It's also autonomous cars. Every major car company has an autonomous car. Right. Like Waymo is rolling out on our streets, Google's autonomous car company, this decade, or this year. Simultaneously, Hyperloop, high-speed trains, LA to Las Vegas in 25 minutes, right? There are 25 different Hyperloop projects in the world today. Right. Then, Elon Musk, the Boring Company. We're going to drill tunnels under cities, and this is already happening all over the place, and put cars on high-speed conveyor belts. And Elon's crazy idea, the rockets that he's using right now to put satellites in space that he wants to take people to Mars with in the 2030s, he has promised that before 2030, you can use them for terrestrial travel. So New York to Shanghai in 39 minutes. The point is, so the point is not just it's all of these over the next 10 years, and you have to, like this does, like think about simple things, car insurance. Well, if the cars are all autonomous, you don't need cars. In fact, Waymo, when you sit in one of their autonomous cars, you're automatically insured. It happens automatically. The risk profile is shifted, right? So whole categories of insurance go away. But simple stuff. If Las Vegas to Los Angeles is 25 minutes, how big is the local dating pool?
You got it.
Right? How big is the size of the local school district, right? You live in LA, you don't like the schools your kids are going to, suddenly they can go to school in Vegas, right? It's an hour away or 20 minutes away. All fundamental things, the way we like to talk about it is when you have solitary exponentials, AI, right, whatever, they tend to disrupt products, services, and a little bit they make markets wobble. So like the classic example is Netflix, right? Streaming video, it's one accelerating technology, and they put Blockbuster out of business, right? So this is product, service, and a little bit of the market. With converging exponentials, you get the scale increases massively. So you get products, services, markets, institutions, and all the structures that support them. So, right, suddenly the local dating pool, the local school, like really foundational things.
What's it do to the real estate market?
Oh, the real estate market is insane, right? Because and the consequence. So you went to someplace smart, right? So suddenly you can live. Flying cars, by the way, do 150 miles an hour, and they can do 3 hours of continuous flight. So imagine how far you can live. And this has enormous environmental consequences. The best thing we can do for the environment is leave nature alone. And suddenly we can live in, right, you were just in Coeur d'Alene, you were talking about how much you like Idaho, and one of the reasons we like Idaho so much is because there aren't many people there, right? That's about to change with flying cars, or we're gonna have to legislate around it and think about this stuff and get out ahead in front of it. That's just transportation, right? Every other industry is just as crazy.
We're gonna look at our lifetime back and go, most people used to live within 30 miles of where they worked. We're gonna look back at that time and go, how bizarre, what a small world it once was, and how much, where you wanna go to dinner at night.
And by the way, let's talk about your new industry. You're now in the podcasting business.
Right.
And we were just talking, you like to make your things an hour, 45 minutes to an hour long because the average commute is 45 minutes to an hour, right? So, and you're more popular on audio than video because people are listening to you. So in flying cars or in autonomous cars, you can have a completely, it's a theater. It's a moving theater, right? If you want, you can have a desk to work at, you can have blah, blah, blah. So suddenly podcasters who have been relying on audio, right, it may go to video because the autonomous cars, like the cars where people are driving to work, the commute hasn't changed, but they no longer have to drive and now they can watch it. Even like, I'll tell you something crazy. Nobody likes it when I talk about this out loud, but everybody on the inside of the autonomous car industry is talking about it. Autonomous cars are gonna revive the sex industry in ways we haven't even, like it's a brothel on wheels, right? Imagine what happens with Tinder, like Tinder for autonomous, want to share a car home, right? I mean, like people are talking, like they don't like it when you talk about it out loud, but like that's what I mean when you talk about like the fundamental fabric of society is gonna change. All that stuff is going to shift in wild, weird ways. And you know, one of the reasons we wrote the book is most people are scared about the future, and that fear is based on a lack of knowledge. So go out, read about what's coming, and figure out how you can take advantage of it in your industry.
Get their book. I'm serious. I endorse books when someone's on my show if I've read the book. Like, you gotta get the book. Like, why would you not want to know this information? Why would you not want to know what's coming? Why would you not want to begin to think this way? And when you can converge these two things, everybody, when you have the convergence of this flow state and the convergence of what's coming, and people say, wow, that sounds pie in the sky. Many of the things we've described are here now. Most of my very wealthy friends, when we're talking about different things that we're being pitched on investment-wise, I mean, I'll be honest with you, flying cars and autonomous cars are constly coming up all the time. Right now, like significant investments from very smart people.
Yeah, and I mean, Tony, Peters, and what are they doing? Longevity and stem cells, right? Like our friends are, Peter's got 4 different longevity companies. Right? Like, and I don't know how many Tony has, but like.
A bunch.
Right?
A bunch.
Like, they got a lot of money, they want to live forever. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Let's go one more area, because I have not talked about this with you at all, and I'm just curious, because we're talking about travel, and there's all kinds of, there's quantum computers and all these other things we could be talking about. And if you think that this is pie in the sky stuff, if I'd have told you 10 years ago, even 10 years ago, that you would just say, I want a jug of milk, and it's at your house the next day. You just say it out loud into the air, and the milk shows up at your freaking house, right? Like, you'd have thought I was absolutely crazy. My son and I were touring this college, and they were showing us how amazing their library was. Their library, and I'm like, these still exist? Like, you used to have to get in your car, drive somewhere, give them your card, they'd, with ink on a deal, write it on there, check you a book out. Like, Dude,
wait, do you remember learning, we're roughly the same age, do you remember learning the card catalog?
Yes!
Like, that was the thing you had to learn.
Yes.
Here's how we use the card catalog. And I was like, right?
It's stupid things you take for granted. Like, you used to have a Thomas guide. Like, that wasn't long ago.
Exactly.
I just looked at a pretty vintage car, not that vintage.
Was there a Thomas guide in it? Yeah,
guide in the car. So when we're talking about these things, guys, you have to, you must. It's a necessity that you begin to think this way. I'm just curious because I haven't asked you this. What do you think it means for space travel? Do you have any insights into that?
So we, at the end of the book.
I know.
Right. Yeah, that's where you're going. The book is really, it's focused on the next 10 years. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? But we pull back in the last chapter for the 100-year view. And two things to know about the 100-year view. So Ray Kurzweil also worked the numbers on what happens over 100 years. So it's 10 years, where it's 100 years worth of change over the next 10 years. Deep breath. Before the end of the century, according to Kurzweil, who's barely wrong about anything, like, he's just not wrong. He's made so many predictions. He's batting like 86%. I mean, from the fall of the Soviet Union to the arrival, like, I mean, just he doesn't seem to miss with this stuff because it follows just, there's math underneath it, essentially. He says over the next 100 years, before the end of the century, we're going to experience 20,000 years of technological change. So that's birth of agriculture to the Industrial Revolution twice in the next 80 years. So let's say he's off by 50%, right? Let's say he's spectacularly wrong, right? And it's only 10,000 years of change. Are you kidding? Right? So one of the things that's going to happen, and we look at this in the end of the book, is this is the century that we stop being a single planetary species. We become a multi-planetary species. And this, it being partnered with Peter for almost 20 years at this point, this is his big passion, so I've got to see it up close a lot. And I've watched this, go from Peter's crazy idea that he shared with a handful of other people into $1 billion industry growing towards $1 trillion industry. So it's really, it's massively matured, it's really funny because what we write about in the book is like, if you think about the space race, I say that to most people, they think USSR versus USA, right? That's the what got us into space? It was competition between two superpowers. What's gonna unlock the space frontier this century? Competition between two superpowers. Only those powers are Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, right? They're arguing. Bezos got Blue Origin, Musk has got SpaceX, and they've got different viewpoints. Bezos wants to go to the moon and build floating space colonies. Musk wants to go to Mars, right? And that is what is unlocking the space frontier. And by the way, just so people can wrap their heads around this isn't actually in the book, but there's a company, I'm going to blank the name of it. Peter's been talking about it for weeks now. They figured out how to 3D print in a couple of weeks a rocket. And this is amazing because it used to be rockets are billion-dollar toys, and if you screw something up in design, right, you build it and you're like, oh damn, I wish the fin was 5 degrees off, or you're screwed. Now we can iterate a rocket in 2 weeks. Nothing like this has ever happened, and this is already this is here right now. Really cool, really interesting. So yeah, and it's probably going to happen over the next 20 years.
Do you think that a couple more things? I'm fascinated, but this is for me, there's a conversation many years in the making of wanting to ask these questions. I know it is for my audience too. Do you think that forecast a little bit? You've been in this space a while. Is there a future that you see coming where predatory type people change their behavior? Is there another venue or forum other than just online? Is anything you see that we should be looking out for that's sort of the next level, right? As you said, we didn't have text and phone back in the day. Now we've got Instagram and TikTok and dating apps. Is there anything on the horizon?
I think whatever the next thing is, people will try to exploit it. Whether it's, I another level of communication, another level of internet connectivity. We see it with the interactive video games. That's another thing. People think, well, the kid's safe playing a video game. Well, they don't know who's on the other end of that. Maybe you say they're, Sam Johnstone from wherever, but you don't know who that really is. So I think it's really it's the same predatory behavior taken to the next level and exploiting whatever technology is available. I mean, in the old days, you could sell the same tractor 6 times at the bus station, to the same guy looking to buy a tractor. And you could get away with it about, 7 times before the sheriff would figure out what you're up to. And today, it's just, all you need is a picture of the tractor. And, people sell stuff multiple times, all the time online. So you got to be careful.
I was going to just add to what you're saying that, I'm a target for certain people just because of, net worth or whatever, or reach. And I just want to share with the audience that when someone doesn't usually come right directly at me with their thing they'd like to get from me. It trickles over time, and it can seem like a very normal relationship in the beginning, even for an extended period of time. But what I didn't know was in the back of their mind, they were waiting for that moment where I was the most comfortable, I was the most vulnerable, I was the most trusting. We are being groomed by people for different things other than just what Chris is experiencing or experienced. So that's true, isn't it, Chris? There's a grooming that someone who's trying to get something from you.
I've seen it. I've seen it in my life. I mean, I said to people, I said, do you really think that I'm the guy you want to try and con? How do you think that's going to possibly go? And mostly it's people, make up a story, but it's happened a couple of times where, I've caught somebody trying to take advantage or an online scam or, the typical phone calls you get when it's somebody trying to get money from you for some nefarious reason. And that you can tell because they'll say Christoph or, be half the name that doesn't fit on their readout sheet. And put an ER on that or take the off that. And does that name sound at all familiar to you? Oh my God, sorry about you.
They picked the worst dude.
Yeah. Could you pick a worse human being to screw on this day?
That is precious. My last question, I'm curious.
Sure.
I mean redemption, but I think I've always in my mind thought when it came to sexual predators, physical abusers, I've just sort of always, that's been a category that I went, no, they're not redeemed. They don't come back. They don't get a second chance. I'm just being candid about everything. Liars, cheaters.
Oh, yeah.
Philanderers, bad people, gossipers, they can all be redeemed and changed. Those 2 categories for me have always been, nope, they're not redemptive. No way, no how ever would I trust them again.
Well, I think there's a category of predators who can never be reformed. I think there definitely is a group, and no matter what you do or how you punish or anything else, they're going to figure out a way to pray. They're hardwired to do it. And that's probably, at least in my experience of 30 of these guys, you're never going to change them. And they're going to be, and we've seen them get out. We've seen them reoffend. We've seen guys who successfully go on to have productive lives. And, I think there are categories that with monitoring and probation and some sort of treatment, I think they'll be fine. But we've also had guys in prominent positions who, been the therapist and had their parole officer visit, and they're not supposed to have a device that has access to the internet, and the phone rings while they're in with the therapist and the probation officer, and they're caught red-handed with the phone. I mean, it's like, come on, Jesus, could you at least try? But they can't be reformed in some cases.
In the age of social media, even those of you that are in sales or in marketing, one, you can hear how cognizant an entertainer is of this, so I have the priority of that. But also the second thing is everything now has to have an entertainment aspect to it. Even your presentation, it's almost like infotainment. There's got to be something where people enjoy the experience of receiving your sales pitch, of receiving your information, of interacting with you. It's all about the experience. But the one thing, like the fly just flew by you, and off camera I told you,
One of my bits, like Al Pacino, it's like he's always looking at a fly. Did I lick something?
You got it.
Was the fly there?
No, it was some white thing.
Oh.
You got it. You just ate it.
Oh.
Whatever it was, I hope it's yummy. Okay.
You know what that was? Success. I don't know why I looked at that camera. That's totally the wrong camera. But Donald Trump would do that. Look, I'm looking at the perfect camera right now, and if I'm not, that person's going to be gone. Well, I don't even know what I was going to say. That's sort of weird.
No, but I was saying...
See how you get real close? It's like
get in the zone.
Like there's a force field
on
there.
It's an energy thing. It just gets you close.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's a good example, though. Off the camera, I told you, and you agreed with me, that we're very similar in that we're both very... You're hyper observant of people. Like, I think you can't do what you do. Correct me if I'm wrong in a minute, but like, I don't think you can do what you do unless you're just unbelievably observant of people. And I am too. I told you that because my dad was a drinker when he was younger, I'd have to really... I learned at like 4 or 5 years old to observe my dad when he'd come home to know which version I was getting. Was I getting the sober, fun, loving dad, or was I kind of getting the dad who may be a little bit tired or in a bad mood, or, you know?
So you learn to read the audience. You learn to read the audience and then be a person based on that audience and who that version of you or that piece of you. For me, I was in high school, and when I was in high school, I would actually know when the class. I couldn't tell you how. Maybe I had spider sense. I don't know, but I couldn't tell you how. But I could feel when the class wasn't understanding stuff. So I would ask questions that would help the other students. And I was a B kind of student. I wasn't an A student. I struggle this with my son, who's way smarter than me, but has the same mentality as me. And I wish I could just go, look, you could be so much further along in the rest of your life if you knew what I knew now. But I would actually ask questions. I remember being in a specific Spanish class and saying something, does that mean, and then whatever, and the teacher would say yes, and then a couple more sentences to explain it, and then I could feel the other kids around the room actually engaging and going, okay, now we got it. And I don't know why I did it. I don't know. The teachers would always tell my parents I was a leader, and my dad would be like, this kid's not a leader, what are you talking about? Like, because I didn't have a ton of confidence as a kid. I still don't. It still hits me. Like, I know what I can do, and I know what I'm really good at, but anything new, a new adventure is difficult for me. Right now in stand-up, I'm trying lots of new stuff, and it's not all impression-based. When I go and do the impression, if I know the impression's done, like, they're never really done, but it's worked on to a point where it's ready to go, that I can sell it. But to sell me talking, this is taking what I'm doing right now, and it's because I've been podcasting a lot and talking as myself, that I've learned to feel that I'm actually interesting as myself talking. And I can go into this other stuff, which is what sets me apart. I can just be talking and become Donald Trump or go Morgan Freeman or just set into John Mann or John Gruden, man. I can just go from voice to voice. How can you become like a 7-year-old girl? I've never seen anything like, you go from just this guy, like, all right, oh my gosh, that's so hot.
I'm smitten with you. It's why I did the show. I'm telling you right now. And by the way, I appreciate you saying that about your confidence level, because you really can't transfer to someone that which you're not feeling. That's so, like, even in your stand-up, like, you do need to get to that level of comfort with the new material to transfer the certainty to people. I think that in everything we do, that's just something to be conscious of. Like, other guys I work with that are in the communication, I'm like, you have to get to the place where you're that confident and certain, because the audience senses your lack of certainty, especially, by the way, and this is for you salespeople too, especially when there is a portion of your presentation you're more certain about. They can feel the energy difference when you go into the stuff that you're not as certain about. The contrast gives you a space that's dangerous energy-wise when you're presenting.
A lot of people can feel truth. That's what actors are really good at, creating truth. Now, some people are great actors, and they can create a truth, but people can read truth. And when you're coming from something, that's why we use anecdotes, personal anecdotes, because an emotion is tied to that inside of you, and then you can tie it, and if it really hits you, the audience will feel that as well. If you just tell it, if you make up a story, a lot of the audience, some of it might buy buy it, but other people are going to be like, I don't know why, and they might not even know why, but it doesn't, when you have that emotion, when you have that, entertainment's not really different than sales.
It's not.
No, I mean, when you're an actor, you're just selling that you're somebody else.
Right, and I say this to all the time of people. I'm really glad we're going here for a second. I don't think you can transfer to somebody or an audience, a person or an audience, that which you're not experiencing yourself. So if the story is true, or if you do believe it, or if you are confident in it, you'll transfer that certainty to somebody, that energy to someone. If you're not, they feel it. And that's why a lot of times some of my stand-up friends, when they are trying new material, it's difficult to decipher whether the material is good or not, because it's not the material that may not be good, it's your lack of comfort and certainty with it. That's also true for those of you that are in sales. It may not be that your presentation is not really what it should be. It may be that you're not yet repetitious enough with it or confident enough with it where you're transferring the energy to it. It may not be the words or the joke.
Do you, and I didn't learn about this until acting. I just recently, in the last few years, started taking acting classes. I always thought there's no way that stuff's real or works. So I met a guy in Phoenix, his name's Matt Deering, and he's been out to the East Coast to train with like some real big time acting coaches. And I never realized how important it was to have things, and this is a sales thing.
Yeah.
This is even outside, but it works in knowing your lines in entertainment in a script.
Yeah.
If you can say a script while doing something else, then you really know it.
Wow, that's
so. If you memorize to the point where we would memorize a script, and then what we do is we'd play catch or be doing something else while reciting the script back and forth. If you can do that, it's second nature. Because so I'm talking and I'm trying to present an idea to you, right? Mm-hmm. So I could be doing anything. I could be checking this pillow over here. Mm-hmm. I can do anything I want. I can be taking a drink. Mm-hmm. I naturally pause. I know when to start talking again. But if it were a script, you ever watch somebody on screen and you know they're like, okay, now I have to take a drink.
Yes.
And you can see that happen.
Yes.
Or you try it yourself. That's because you don't know the dialogue that well that you just can't talk through it.
Very good. That's really good.
It's an amazing, and that's what the best actors can do. They can memorize to a point where they just talk.
Well, that's outstanding. I've not heard that before.
So if you have to think, this is as an actor, and I would say this works in sales too. If you have to think about what you're going to say, you've already lost the audience for that amount of time because they're going, wait, you ever see somebody do this? Mm-hmm. And it's not planned. There can be moments where you're thinking of something, but you come out of character of it. Because when you're doing a presentation, you're kind of in your character mode of your presentation version of yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you come out, you gotta think, what was I gonna say here? That part right there, all of a sudden they go, he doesn't know he's talking.
Doesn't know what he's talking about, or they don't trust what you're about to say being true. That's so interesting you say that. I just want to weave a line in here about it. One of the things I always say is that you need to know your lines or your presentation so well, and whatever you're doing, that it's reflexive, meaning you don't think you be, because under pressure, you respond reflexively to things. And if that reflex is you don't know it, you're screwed. I just interviewed Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, and he said he's all about energy with these animals, right? It's just really interesting. And I just did it this week. It'll come out, before this comes out. But what was interesting was he said that when he's in best influence with an animal is that he is being, not thinking, which is exactly what you just said.
I mean, when you can relate, and it's a give and take with the audience or whatever you're doing, we're doing that right now. Mm-hmm. There isn't so much, we're not trying to keep to a script. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things you talked about before we came on here, it's like, don't have part A, part B. It's not my turn to talk, it's not your turn to talk. It's let's talk together, because that's how people actually talk. Correct. In a script, if you don't have it memorized and you're thinking, you don't have it memorized enough, you're like, okay, it's my turn to talk. That's already taking you out of the script. Mm-hmm. It's my turn to talk. You just have to hear it and go. Right. And you're in the moment. I think that applies to all the sales, all presentations.
So do I.
Everything you're doing. It's that don't think, don't plan, just be.
Gosh, that's so good, because I'm really glad we're going there, because I did something recently on listening that you were making reference to earlier. And the only way in sales, or even in anything like this, is the only way that you can really listen to somebody is that you are already very comfortable with what you would say, so that you don't have to be thinking about what you're going to say back to somebody. You can actually just be present with them.
And don't plan what you're about to say back. Listen to what they have to say. Because if I listen to what you have to say, my planned response may not fit what you just said.
That's good.
So if you do want to get a message across, make sure you address what the person just said first. This is not acting. This is because you can't do that. You can't change the lines in acting if you're doing a script that's written. But in terms of sales, relationships in business, don't just have this next thing planned to say, because that will turn a person off. It's like you're literally, if somebody uses a word, you using that as a connection, you lose a connection on when somebody is doing something completely different and on a different plane than you. When they're going off and like, okay, but let's bring it back. Like, it's not even that. It's, you ask me a question and I start saying things about acting again, but it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Because I had this plan in my head, and that's not what people want.
I watch that a lot in interviews on podcasts too. I'm like, oh, you didn't even hear what they just said. You just went back into the next thing you had on the list. I'm curious, do you know when you're losing an audience? And if you do know you're losing it, is there a way to change that?
I mean, right now I lose an audience more because I go off on these tangents to try different things. But I'm almost purposely doing that.
Speak about that. I think that's being willing to take some risks. 100%,
because I'm so scared. I got so happy with what I was doing with my act and the formulas in my act that I didn't take a lot of risk, and it became. You ever hear the story about stories? And this is psychological, I guess, as well. Somebody gets in a car accident. The best thing to do is get them in a car again. The longer you wait, the tougher it is to get them back in that car, because they'll build up. They'll make the event bigger and bigger and bigger. I was on stage doing the same stuff over and over, bored with my act, not taking chances, not learning, not getting better. And it took its toll on me, but I was out there just making, again, that was the business side of me, not the art or the relationship side of me. The relationship there is between me and the audience, and doing a lot of the same stuff over and over. Now, I have to do certain things. If I don't do a John Madden impression, I don't do a Morgan Freeman, I don't do some of these impressions people know me for, people will get upset. I believe there's still an audience, and I'm going to give them the things they want, but in different ways and lots of different stuff as well.
Yeah, you go see the Rolling Stones, they better play Satisfaction, right? You'd be like, wait a minute, man. I mean, I want your new stuff.
Yeah.
Anytime you go see a new band, you're like, I'll listen to some of your new stuff, but I came to hear
I want to hear Billy Joel, I want to hear Piano Man.
Exactly.
If I don't get Piano Man, I'm sad. And he's an entertainer who gets it, and he'll do that. Even you play the new stuff, and it's the art. It's the combination of art and business, which is what pretty much everything is.